to this webinar about creativity. And creativity sounds something odd in procurement, right? Is creativity for procurement? Is it something that we need in procurement? We have our processes. Well, we have an hour to discuss that. Let's see if creativity can be of any help to the procurement function. First, I'd like to state the problem. Why are we thinking about creativity in procurement? Procurement, for many decades now, wants to contribute more directly, to the value creation of the company, to the growth, to the revenue of the company, and not only to manage the mere spend. For this, procurement is in charge of innovation, detecting innovation at suppliers, implementing innovation coming from suppliers, and trying to gauge, evaluate, and manage the value creation coming from the suppliers. And we live in a world in which innovation is everywhere, and where buyers are confronted with many opportunities of technology, digitized technology, other types of technologies, new concepts, new products, new suppliers. The world is changing, the economy is changing, and it's up to procurement to seize the opportunity on the supplying markets. Buyers, therefore, are confronted or demanded with new ways of working with suppliers, new modalities of collaboration, more co-investment, more collaboration, more cooperation. So new modalities of collaboration with suppliers, which mean that buyers need to create new ways. So we live in a world in which procurement is not anymore an execution. We're not here only to execute what's been decided above us or behind us. We're here to detect value opportunities, to draft a plan, to see if these value opportunities can fit the company, fit the growth, fit the revenue. In other terms, to be inventive, creative, innovative in terms of business models, of ways of working, and also in terms of value contribution to our own proper business. So we contribute more and more to define the proper business of our companies. But, and there's a big but, we have not been raised in a creative culture until now. We have been raised in a culture of processes, of procedures, where probably a part of our creativity has been inhibited. And this is why we decide to speak about creativity today in 2023. It is now time to unleash the creative potential of procurement. So what do we need to do? What does procurement need to do in the 2020s and notably in 2023? Attract creative people. Allow deviance. When people deviate from a process, it may be something right, and something in which there is value. And sometimes we even need to encourage this deviance. We need to reward creativity. When people are creative, to let it know and to reward them with tangibles. We need to advertise how creative we are and how creative we've been through stories in our communication towards stakeholders. And in order to refine our creativity and become always more creative, we need to organize a creative environment. Needless to say, we probably need to change some schemes, some patterns of work, and notably work on what we call creative socialities, how we connect people, expose people to outer inputs which can inspire them, make people generate ideas and systematize idea generation patterns like brainstormings, etc., inspire from other functions, from other companies, and reserve time to get inspired by what is being done outside of our procurement department, rely on external activities, and also build a kind of distance, a psychological distance with what's happening in order to be fully in control of what we develop, of the value creation, of the innovation that we're bringing. So that is the intention of this webinar. Should we do that? Should we start to do that? How to start to do that? This is what we're going to discuss in several schemes, as you can see here. First, we will discuss why creativity in reality is in the nature of procurement, what creativity consists in, practically speaking, in procurement, in a VUCA world. What are the core skills of creativity? What are the lateral skills of creativity? So the core skills are, let's say, the musts of creativity, the things that we must develop. The lateral skills are less specific to creativity, but they can be a help. They are nice to have. We will focus about how to become creative, how to nurture the creativity which we have, how to promote what we are doing internally and externally, and how to help all this transform procurement and transform the company. So let's start with why. Why being creative? Is it necessary? Well, one thing that we must say is that the world transforms. The world is becoming something else in the last years. It's a question of cost, it's a question of markets, of suppliers, it's a question of relations with suppliers, it's a question of technology, of digitization, it's a question of environment, but it all feels the world transforms. And this transformation needs us to adopt the change, to follow the change, and sometimes to be even ahead of the change, or sometimes to elicit the change and to format the change in the direction that we want. So, yes, our creativity is needed. Procurement today contributes to major transformations. If you think about the major transformations of the last year, electrification, CO2 reduction, inflation, pandemic, of course, etc., etc., we have changed ways of working. Our companies have changed business models, or if not business model, they have changed a little bit the way that they operate, or they change completely the concept of what we are doing. Think about the automotive with electrification, for instance. And we can't say that procurement is only following. Procurement detects, procurement sees opportunity and then seizes these opportunities. Procurement helps the whole company to adopt these changes. So procurement is ahead of the transformation, fosters, elicits the transformation of the company. So procurement is definitely in a leading role, leading notably because a number of innovation is coming from the supplier through procurement. Right, so reason number one why we must be creative is innovation. Innovation is everywhere. What are we confronted with? We are confronted with digitization of everything, which changes not only what we are doing, but how we are doing. Electrification, new technologies, think about nanotechnologies, biotechnologies. So a number of industries are completely reshaped by the technological innovations. So how to be creative in such a world? Well, first of all, adopting these new technologies and adopting them in time, not later than our competitors. So there is, in this adoption of new technology, there is a time dimension. It's even a time race sometimes. Searching for new solutions to be ahead of the change, of the transformation, detecting new solutions coming up in the next year so that we're not confronted with new solutions at the last minute, but we have anticipated and we know they are coming. And inducing these changes, these transformation for our business. A reason number two is that we must manage a transition in terms of ecology. And it has started. We want to make things greener. The society demands that companies are greener and greener. What are we confronted with? A problem with CO2 emissions, with carbon emissions, and obviously the necessary decarbonation induced. Deforestation, wildlife, microplastics. We're confronted with a series of difficulties which demands that we are creative. We need to invest in new solutions. We need to make the suppliers aware of what we're requesting. We need to investigate market solutions and discover potential new solutions. Frequently, when we discover this, we're not ready for these new solutions, these new technologies. We need to partner the supplier with unusual players. Some of them can be labs, university labs. Others can be NGOs. Sometimes others can be second tier, third tier, fourth tier suppliers. Others can be suppliers from the other side of the world, detaining a technology which is crucial to us. So partnering, co-investing with people who we don't know and that we're not accustomed to work with. And of course, it means transforming the business. That means all what we're detecting, investigating, investing in through our partnerships. We need to help our own business, our production, our sales, our marketing to adopt it and to change a little bit the concept of what we are buying because of what we have detected on the supplying markets. Reason number 3 is relations, business to business relations. Well, this is probably less new, right? Ecological transition, innovation has accelerated in the last years. There has been a change in business to business relations and supplier relationship management in the last 20 years, but it's accelerating. We are in a world in which suppliers ask us to be collaborative, to be cooperative, to be co-investing, co-developing with them. Otherwise, they don't want to work with us, or they reserve their best technology and their best efforts to their other clients. So we're confronted with a world in which co-investments, co-development, joint ventures, ecosystems, SRM with suppliers, long-term contracts, risk sharing, resource sharing, all this has become not only a plus, but a must. In front of these markets, these new markets which demand co-investment, co-development, collaboration, cooperation, we need to be creative as well. We need to find new ways of making revenues or to share revenues or to share the benefit of working together. So new business models in which the supplier and the other players participating to an ecosystem or an association can get retributed for their cooperation. We need to switch to modes in which we're not owning any more resources, open resources, whether it is about a technology, a patent, or people. We need to switch to modes in which we're mutualizing assets, mutualizing knowledge, mutualizing human resources, which is sometimes a new way of working. All this is relative to the fact that external resources are needed, but it's not because we need them that we want to recruit them or that we want to buy them. We want to collaborate with them, right? We want to work with them without owning them. And these are new ways of working. Ecosystems would be a good example where we need to be creative in the organization. So to put it in a nutshell, our creativity is about new suppliers, new markets. It's about new relations with these new suppliers and new market, new business models, about revenue generation, retribution, sales. It's also about technologies, notably digitization, nanotechnologies, environmental technologies. It's about the necessary environmental transition, and it's about a new social involvement, meaning that all companies want to contribute to the transformation of our societies. Creativity is at the heart of the most strategic processes, and that's not new. When we are performing design to cost, when we analyze functionally, when we adopt design thinking, or when we co-design solutions, when we innovate, we have always needed creativity. Creativity is also in our how we speak about ourselves. In procurement, we want to be heard. we want to be listened to, we want to be noticed, we want our contribution to be more recognized. One of the major problems of procurement is obviously recognition. So we want to be heard, but if we want to be heard, we need to make what we say noticeable. We will not be heard if we say something very standard, if we communicate about things which people are accustomed to. So we need to strike with news. We need to discover opportunities and let people know. We need to create surprises, unexpected events. So for all this, and for explaining the value contribution of procurement and changing the recognition of procurement, we need to be creative. We need to be creative also to be remembered. Otherwise, we will probably be heard, but very quickly forgotten. So it's about creating special events, supplier day, supplier show, something unusual. It's about gamifying everything, making our stakeholders work in ways, new ways, which are fun to them, and which of course makes our initiatives remembered and makes at the end ourselves remembered. We need to trespass a number of boundaries and have people trespass their own boundaries, notably in the distribution of tasks between procurement and stakeholders. Right. Now let's move to the next subject, which is not why we should change, but what we can change practically in procurement, in what we call the VUCA world of procurement. VUCA meaning volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Again, things are always changing. We are living in a flow of transformation, and that also requires our creativity. You probably know this say from Heraclitus, change is the only constant in life. I mean that it's all about adaptation, how we adapt, how quickly we adapt, how swiftly we adapt. And it's never the same answer twice. So we must adapt our response to changing markets, changing costs and risks, changing suppliers, changing needs. Changing markets first. What happens? Well, the markets gets more and more concentrated. Many mergers, many acquisitions. There's still a movement of globalization and global bundling at the same time that the contrary movement has started and that a number of companies want to relocalize. So we're still globalizing at the moment that we have already started to relocalize. And of course, technologies are changing. So markets become more concentrated, suppliers become more powerful, the world change its geography and its granularity. How should we react? How to be creative in such a context? Well, new business-to-business strategies, probably new processes to buy, and notably more digitized processes to buy, and organization which are able to manage either the global and the local. This is what we call the glocal, being able to work and to buy globally and locally according to the category. We also know that something that is changing is notably these years, notably the last 1.5 years, is costs. And we're living in an inflationist context, but also human resources and raw materials have risen a lot. So how should we adapt? What kind of creativity do we need? Because of rising costs, of rising risks, we have no other choice than we can't just negotiate. That will not avoid or mitigate anything. The rise is too much. So we need to compensate by revenue. So we need to create new ways of selling, of producing, probably in cooperation with certain suppliers, in order to compensate for the cost increase of what we buy. Which means that procurement has a direct contribution in processes of automation, of robotization, and we need to redesign production processes to create new pricing models in order to compensate what we can't avoid anymore. And this is really a procurement task, and it requires a huge creativity from buyers. Um, Risks are changing. The environment is more risky with an ecological transition needed, as we said previously. But geopolitics has changed too. So we need to treat risks differently, sharing risk with suppliers or sharing risk within an ecosystem of players which work together, deglobalizing, de-risking by the geography, co-creating decarbonated solution. We need also to position as a kind of entrepreneur, I would even say intrapreneur, in terms of environmental solutions. So this requires a lot of creativity, thinking out of the box from the supplier. It's not the same job as 5 years ago. Suppliers are changing. They are diversifying their production, selling to more diverse industry, more diverse clients. They are changing revenue models, and they are themselves engaging in ecosystems with many other companies to gather knowledge. So how to be creative? What should we do? Multi-party agreement, so that ecosystem is more on a concept, but it's something legally framed, and it's a process, a way of working, which we completely control. Um, we're not responsible anymore of prices, but we are responsible of costs. And notably, our liability is more for a total cost, a TCO, than a price level. We're more liable, responsible of the link between cost and revenue, or even benefits. And we need to scout the environment to find third-party partners. Needs are changing too. Needs are changing because our stakeholders needs always quicker lead time, more flexibility, things which are always more customized, and more control on what we buy. So how to react in front of that? Well, what's creativity about? We need to initiate unexpected discussions upstream, even more than before. We need to create new tools to collaborate with stakeholders, and notably through digitization, through apps, and a lot of information that we can gather or spread through mobile phones, through apps, to a community of stakeholders. And we need to understand the reason to be of needs, what's beyond the needs. So, as for needs, we could close saying that to be creative in procurement, first we need to listen. Listen really. Listen truly with an open mind, without an agenda, objectives in the background of our mind. We need to be extremely open to what stakeholders says, and also to what suppliers says. Another point is, to be creative in procurement, we need to be an intelligent connector, connecting people, connecting suppliers, connecting stakeholders and suppliers, connecting internally and externally. And that's how procurement can be creative. Now, that's what we need to develop, but it requires some skills. And I'd like to focus now on these core skills which make creativity, which I would say create creativity. And we let's start with a quote from Steve Jobs. He says, "Well, creativity is not a miracle. It's not a given from the gods." When creative people are asked how did they do, they will say, "Well, we just connected things. It seems obvious to us." So they just connect experiences, synthesize, and come up with a creation. So creativity is not unfeasible. Creativity is not mysterious. Creativity relies on very simple skills. And the core skills that can be useful in procurement, the musts of creativity, uh, are at least these four ones: problem solving, convergent thinking, divergent thinking, and lateral thinking. Let's try to have a look in detail. Problem solving first. What is problem solving? It's the ability to handle difficult, complex situations in a complex business challenge. What does it rely on? What kind of ability does it rely on? First of all, the ability of listening, as we say, to understand fully, uh, notably through a certain empathy towards stakeholders. And then from this listening to research, to investigate causes, to investigate supply chain, internal processes, and analyze. Analyze means compare, correlate, concatenate, understand root causes, prioritize, etc. Once we have analyzed, then we must make a decision, and that's the ability to crystallize the problem into one action, which will solve or contribute to solve the problem. There's another ability which problem solving skills rely on, and this is reliability, the trust that people have in the problem solver. Good problem solvers have built a reputation around them, and it works two ways. That's because they've been good in solving problems that they have this reputation, but it's also because they have this reputation that people come to them, ask them to solve problems, and that they carry on building this reputation. So it's a loop. Reputation, trust, reliability, the image of reliability of buyers create the problem solving skills. How to develop then problem solving skills? Exercising. Exercises on business cases, on fictional situation, in role plays, training exactly like we go to the gym to train. We go to workshops, to trainings, to exercise on fictional situations, and exercise ourselves to solve problem. It's also, we can develop problem solving skills also in crystallizing examples, good stories. When we have successfully solved a problem, we must write the story somewhere. We must present it to the community and even outside of the community as example of what we are able to do. You understand that here reliability, trust, reputation of the problem solver is at stake. And we need, of course, to value these activities even when they consume time. Second part is convergent thinking. So what is convergent thinking about? It's about integrated multiple factors as cofactors of a problem, as dimensions combining into one final scenario, integrating all this complexity into something final and something simple. Which means first the ability to judge and gauge the various cofactors, evaluate proportions, levels of correlation, levels of probability, and of course to consider a wide scope of cofactors and dimensions acting contemporarily. Convergent thinking also needs people to be at ease with ambiguity. So the same phenomenon could lead to one conclusion or the contrary conclusion. We must be at ease with this. This is life. And we must be at ease with complexity, because sometimes the cofactors are many and from very different fields. So the ability to manage ambiguity and complexity is a key ability of the convergent thinking skill. One important thing too is final output. The ability to integrate all this complexity into one simple final solution. So we integrate all this big complexity into something at the end which is unique, final, simple. Integrate the complex into a simple output. And notably for the buyer, the ability to crystallize a simple strategy, a simple roadmap, or a simple action plan. How to develop convergent thinking? First of all, building consensus. Frequently, convergent thinking has to do with consensus within the team. So it's not a loss of time to have people speak and speak and speak and debate about how to think to understand this phenomenon, this supplier, this cost, etc., etc. It's not endless speeches. It is the building of a consensus. And once the consensus has been built, of course, people will be much more efficient uh, in uh, uh, in um, in finding solutions. We need also to evaluate proportions, levels of probability, uh, to exercise people judgment, because this is how they evaluate various proportions, and the ability to formulate simple conclusions. Whatever the complexity is, we need to come to something simple at the end. A final strategy, a final action plan, a roadmap in one page only, whatever the complexity of the market, and not a strategy of 10, 20, or 50 pages. Another key skill, core skill of creativity is divergent thinking. It's exact contrary. So that's interesting. To be creative, we need to have the two contraries, divergent thinking and its contrary, convergent thinking. What is divergent thinking? Well, it's a process of creating unique ideas outside of the box, outside of the box, outside of the main schemes. So it has to do with a certain fluency, a certain agility, an ability to envisage ideas, actions from different fields, jumping to these fields, the ability to jump swiftly from a field to another, and to adapt to new fields, notably when we are changing markets, changing suppliers, changing technologies. How to develop our divergence thinking? Inspiring. Inspiring from others, and notably from people who are different from us. Speaking with other companies. Participating to a purchasing alliance and speaking with other buyers of other companies. Speaking with sellers, speaking with finance people, speaking with marketeers. That's what we call cross-functional experience. Brainstorming, making people invent, just put their ideas on a piece of paper, and sometimes they feel stupid, they feel odd to do so, but no, every idea has a potential. Making buyers have outer experiences and make them speak about it. Uh, as we were saying, convergent and divergent thinking are the contrary to one another, but we need both in creativity. In creative processes, we frequently need to start to be divergent, to create idea, to consider a broader scope. And once we have created many opportunities, then, of course, to close this scope and come back to a simple finished idea. So diverging first, converging after. Another core skill is lateral thinking. What is lateral thinking? It's close to divergent thinking, but I would say it's even more. It's the ability to address problems in a way which people do not expect, which involves surprise, which involves sometimes even rejection. It's more radical than being divergent. So it's the ability to deviate, to have the courage of deviating, of being seen as a heretic or as an outlaw, having bypassed processes, rules, uh, of being original, of trying, bringing something new that people have never experimented before, and the ability to explore fields, unusual fields, unusual suppliers, to find interesting cues, interesting solutions. Ability for a buyer to invest time or money in unexpected development, to scout unusual markets, for instance. So how to develop this lateral thinking? Well, first of all, allow people to deviate. So don't punish heretics, don't punish outlaws. Yeah, they're deviating from the processes. They are doing something that the organization and their job description does not allow, but maybe for the sake of the company. And if it is for the sake of the company, if it is bringing value, instead of punishing them for deviating, reward them for deviating. Um, Create a culture of contradiction. Uh, Relax thinking from rigid control, and notably the control of processes, If people don't respect the processes, it's bad if we're losing value. But if it's good and we can allow them for this, if this is a good idea that which at the end will produce values. Right. Together with these main core skills, there are some lateral skills. What are these lateral skills? They are less specific to creativity. They're useful to creativity, but they're also useful to leadership, to entrepreneurship. But they are pluses. They are nice to have, which can really help creativity. So the core skills make creativity. The lateral skills help creativity. And what are these lateral skills helping creativity? Boundary spanning, sense making, social brokerage, visionariness, and open mindedness. What's social brokerage? Social brokerage is the process in which people broker relations among people who do not know one another or do not want to work or are not accustomed to work together, which means that these people needs to be, first of all, very unique and very central, the ability to position as a central person connecting others. Uh, and it needs also the ability to engage and to make people engage, to embark people emotionally in initiatives. How to develop social brokerage? Well, some characters, some personalities are more naturally social proxies, right? They are more naturally connecting people, speaking with everybody, and making people meet and making people work together. So we need to detect them and we need to recruit them, and we need to recruit people who have a kind of interpersonal charisma, people that are naturally, spontaneously listened to. Well, this is something that has been understood by sales, by marketing, much before. We're now understanding it in procurement in the first decades of the 21st century. But it's never too late. We need to recruit charismatic people and to detect and value social proxies. Another lateral skill is boundary spanning. What is this? There's always fields, spaces, which are excluding others, right? Buyers are in their fields, sellers are in their fields. A company acts in its field, another company, their supplier, acts in their fields, and there are boundaries, limits, there are frontiers between functions and companies. What's a boundary spanner? Somebody who speaks with the others from other companies, from other functions, spontaneously all the time. They span boundaries all the time. So they bridge diverse parts of companies or the economy which would not work together without them. So frequently, when we want people who are boundary spanners have a holistic view instead of looking at the objective for their function, for their portfolio, for their company. They understand the objective for the whole company, for the industry, and even sometimes for the society. Frequently, boundary spanners like to work in ecosystem, and you can even find them in ecosystems because ecosystem, by definition, connect the internal with the external. Um, Another ability is to share resources, to mutualize resources among companies, notably sharing cost information. How to develop this boundary spanning skill? Working with startups, uh, mixing the cost focus, the resource focus with the revenue focus, the top line with the bottom line, working on both dimensions all the time. Um, Working in collaboration with various people, with various players, so joint ventures, risk sharing agreements, revenue sharing agreements, ecosystems in which we exchange among a variety of players and push buyers to out of the buying closet, of the procurement closet, so that they work more and more with other types of people. Another lateral skill is sense making, the ability to create meaning, to structure the unknown as to be able to act in it, to create meanings in what we do. So first of all, it needs to integrate procurement at a higher level. When the only meaning of procurement is to reduce the spend, of course, then we will not be creative. We need to integrate procurement at a high level, meaning at a revenue level, at a business level, so that we contribute to define what the business. We need to spread these new meanings and to develop the ability to convince. And sense making is also made of the ability to roadmap, to plan the future, a multi-year plan, a multi-year action plan, roadmap to structure the future. How to develop sense making? Maybe by recruiting in other functions, by recruiting the future buyer not only in procurement positions, but recruiting them in sales, recruiting them in marketing, in finance, in controlling, recruiting them at our suppliers, recruiting them in NGOs, organizing exchanges with other functions, train buyers in many activities. It's not because people will be specialized in procurement that they must not understand anything in marketing, in sales, in revenue, in finance. So we need people to have a little bit of knowledge of everything to be aware of the various dimensions. Another lateral skill is open-mindedness. What is open-mindedness as a skill? It is the ability, the quality of considering ideas and opinions which are new, different from your existing opinion. Which abilities does it rely on? First of all, the taste for uncertainty and ambiguity. When we want to be open-minded, we must not be scared of what we don't know. We need to be aware of the fallibility of one's belief, and not only aware, but to be ready to demonstrate that our beliefs were wrong. So we need to be uncertain and to be happy and proud to be uncertain. We need to have a test for ambiguity, to be at ease with the fact that between A and B, B being the contrary of A, we don't know, maybe both are true. And we need to have a taste for modernism, a propension to envisage and adopt new schemes, and let's say an expectation to build new ways of working. How to develop open-mindedness, make people confident that they can fail, have them recognize the fallibility of options, have them recognize and evaluate ambiguities, and motivate about the future, about the creation of a new way of buying, of a new industry. Right. One last lateral skill, of course, is visionariness, the ability of having a vision for the future and to transform current patterns. So, which abilities does it rely on? The ability to create a vivid image of the target to attain, to create resonance, the ability to make the vision resonate with people's expectations, fears, plans, and the ability to embed this vision within the team so that the whole team is aware of the same vision and has a common vision. It's also linked to the ability to deploy the rational vision into real action, to translate the vision into practical actions. So to develop the visionariness, you can find here the same practices like fallibility of options, confidence in failing, but also the evaluation of coincidental ambiguities. Right, now how to become creative. It's the uniqueness of each buyer which contributes in its original way to the business. So to become creative, we first need to know, read, hear, see, business cases, best practices from others, stories from other buyers, from other companies. So we need people to inspire from stories that they can find here and there in the industry. Don't analyze too much. Don't be too rational. Don't react too quickly. Just read, just listen, just hear what others have done, what other buyers have done, what other companies have done. Um, we need to practice daydreaming, right? Imagine the future business. Frequently, people do not allow themselves to plan or to imagine a future. But they can allow it, they dare to do it when they do it with others. So when we ask them to imagine a future together, to draft the plan, to imagine what the company will be within 10 years' time, what we will produce, what the suppliers will be, what procurement will do, etc., etc. So every time there is a change, at each change of information, we need to elaborate a new plan for the future. And this must be a constant activity. It's not a one-off, right? We need to do it again and again, and we need to gamify it. People must be excited, motivated to do it. So it should be very relaxed, it should be very informal, it should be very regular. Frequently, it should be quick, because if it's too long, then people will lose the fun and the motivation to do it again and again. We need to ask the right question. Frequently, if we're stuck in a situation, it's because we have associated a problem with one question, but maybe the question is something else. So we need to change the questions that we associate to a problem. And again, we need to play. This is a game that we need to play regularly and to play in teams. We need to fuse ideas to make remote association of ideas. So to merge unlike ideas which are unlikely to be related into one idea. And that's frequently what we can do when we are organizing problem solving sessions. We need also to learn to crystallize, which means out of all this complexity and many opportunities of the future, many evolution, many changes from the supplying markets, we need to crystallize to one simple plan, one simple solution, one simple answer. And again, this must be a team activity, and it must bring people fun. So because people will be creative when they have fun and when they feel informal. Um, we need also to develop, nurture the plasticity of our brain. It's well known that creativity relies on how plastic our brain is, how we can convert our way of thinking, and that this is developed by the practice of arts, of sports, when we learn language, etc., etc. So we need people to develop them personally. Personal development is very crucial to the elicitation of creativity. Reserve time for people to practice sports, arts, learn languages, do other activities, even within the professional environment. How to nurture then the creativity in our team? Um, we need to make procurement a creative space. We need to attract creative people, maybe recruiting them, meeting them. We need to allow and encourage deviance. I mentioned heretics, outlaw, recruiting people who will be able to deviate from processes, entrepreneurs which will revolutionize procurement. We need to reward when people have been creative, when they dared to deviate from the processes for the good reason, at the end, bringing value to procurement, to the company, and showing this value. Then, even if they deviated, we must not punish, of course, and we must even reward. How? Through awards, through the career, through money, financial retribution, or just social appraisal. Up to you to choose, but creativity needs to be rewarded if you want to make it a constant process. We need also to promote our creative achievement outsides. in conventions, in stakeholders, in purchasing alliances, which mean that we must speak about experiences, our business stories, our cases, our case studies to other buyers, or in conventions. We need to share, and also, of course, as we said before, to hear the others' stories. We need sometimes to reshape our office, our proper office, making more space for informal places to meet and discuss informally, to have more social places, probably less desks and more social meeting places. And of course, to find the right organization in terms of smart working and office working. We need to foster creative socialities also. Creative socialities are not born. Yes, there are people who are more charismatic than others, who are more naturally social brokers, but this can also be developed through team events, through games, through team meetings, etc., etc. So foster this sociality, which at the end will develop creativity. We need also to adopt a creative culture, right? Expose people to outer inputs, invite people, invite other buyers, invite suppliers, participate to roundtables which are not specific to our business. We need to expose ourselves to inputs coming from diverse industries and companies. We need to generate ideas. So brainstormings should be done regularly, maybe sometimes at a given frequency, systematically when a problem occurs. We need to reserve time for inspiration. We mentioned that previously. We need to allow time for sports, practice of arts, learning languages, other things than the procurement deliveries. So when are we asking people to do this outside of the work, or are we allowing this during the work time because it's beneficial to the work, to procurement, and to our efficiency? Some companies are having chosen to develop outdoor activities during the work time and in the professional context. Sometimes buyers need to gain conquer psychological distance between themselves and what happened, their suppliers, their negotiations, the stress of deliveries, etc., etc. So should we just be able to respond to their need when they need psychological distance, or should we systematically accompany? Should we provide them with coaching? Should we invest in personal development of individuals within the procurement function? Each company, of course, has different answers. There are some companies which make the experiment of fertilizing the business with the practice of arts. So inspiring from theater experiences, from music ensembles, from improvisation. And they use this within trainings and team meetings to elicit and stimulate their staff creativity. We also need to promote creativity within procurement, right? So a creative experience is always a start of all the process in which we are disoriented. We think about who we are, what we should become, how we should change, how others should change, suppliers, stakeholders, colleagues, etc., etc. If we're able to bring something to the change, what we will do step by step, what we need to learn, etc., etc. So the creative experience is always a kind of first disorientation, a shock that triggers a whole process in which we change. So creativity fosters transformation. So how to do this? Well, when we change the supply relationship, when we change the strategy, when we change the procurement organization, we are working on new assumptions which feed this process. When we focused on other costs than the pure price, the mere price, when we ask ourselves the question of make or buy, when we change the need and reformulate the needs with the stakeholders, we start to think laterally with people. When we consider various costs interacting with one another, when we look at the compound of KPIs within a balanced scorecard, for instance, we frequently manage paradoxes, and these paradoxes feed this transformational experience. When we benchmark internally, externally, when we re-engineer processes, when we adapt, we inspire, we imitate, and all this feeds also the process. When we open space for the affective side, the emotion, the feeling, when we listen to stakeholders, when we listen to suppliers, when we reshape the need definition, we also feed this transformational process triggered by creativity. When we leave space and recognize intuition, notably when we solve problems and somebody has an intuition about how to solve the problem, we also foster this process. When we handle conflicts, and notably conflicts around dissatisfaction or misalignment, we also feed that process, that transformational process triggered by creativity. So in conclusion, creativity is transformational. The creativity in procurement and the innovation in sourcing help to transform the thinking at the macro level in terms of business, in terms of concept, in terms of activity. So the creative experience transforms procurement. And this creative experience transforms procurement by building also an awareness, a consciousness, adding to our consciousness and awareness, and changing our personality. So it has to do with the willingness of having an open mind, the recognitions of things learned, and the attempt of a new way of doing things into their organization. Creativity, or that process which starts from the creative experience and it triggers a whole transformation because it's uncertain, it's ambiguous, it relies on contradiction and paradoxes. Create a kind of soul, right? Create a creative soul, create creativity, because it targets more than processes. It targets and it involves the wholeness of people's lives, buyers' lives, their images, their emotional involvement, the group as an entity. And it has to do with the authenticity, the connection with others, and it creates meaning. So creativity systematically creates new meanings in the organization. You can see here a kind of evolution of procurement. We were born many decades ago as very transactional, here to serve the company. And then we developed into price managers, and then cost managers, and then supply chain responsible. Today we are innovation managers, and to reach these last steps of creativity, we need to develop all these skills. Thank you very much. I've been happy to discuss this with you today. I see here loads of questions, so I will be able only to answer a few ones. Creativity is probably the most human talent. It's difficult to be matched. Yes, indeed. And it's probably because of this, because of what you're saying, that frequently procurement stays in the steps 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4 of the diagram, the Darwinian evolution of procurement that you can see on the screen. Because it's difficult, it's very difficult to jump to step 5 and 6. And notably because it means that once we have built an organization, we have built processes, we're not destroying them, but we allow ourselves, in certain cases, in certain situations, to deviate, to contradict, to work in other ways, right? And that is, of course, very complex to introduce after decades of processing and an organization. I can see also a question on the core skills and the lateral skills. Core skills, so problem solving, convergent thinking, divergent thinking, and lateral thinking, are really very specific to creativity, right? These are really the creativity mechanisms. Um, all the others, social brokerage, boundary spanning, sense making, visionariness, open mindedness, they're very important too, and they can really help a lot, but they're less specific to creativity. They also help entrepreneurship, leadership, sense making, etc., etc. So there are, let's say, broader soft skills that we need to develop. What is the? I can see a very interesting question from Jean, and that will be my last question because it will be time to close very soon. Role of procurement business partners. There is a role, right? First, we have to involve them. Second, they have to be aware that procurement is changing. Procurement is not anymore made of buying robots, right? That you can ask to buy exactly what they have defined. So they must accept us to contradict, to bring new ways, to deviate from what they expect from us. But they are ready, they can be ready to do this if we show the value of doing this. So if we position as problem solvers, as inventors, as bringing people who bring innovations or new opportunities in the company, they will probably allow us for more space to be creative. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you today, and I hope to see you very soon in our courses or in one of our next webinar. If you're interested in these topics, there will be connected topics, November the 9th, art-based training. Is that serious in procurement? Do we really want to consider this? The answer will be November. Thank you and goodbye.